Welcome back to Old Guy REI. It's been a thought of mine for quite some time. As you all know, we started this channel a while back, and the main purpose of it was to help other investors that were trying to get started in investing in real estate by sharing our mistakes and our lessons learned to help them hopefully save money and time and progress a little quicker on their journeys. And today I have a special guest with me. I guess we'll call her Mrs. Old Guy, that's agreed to come on with me today and share her perspective because I've been sharing my perspective all along. And I think it would be helpful for some other investors who maybe not necessarily are married, but have partners or other persons involved in their journey. So I think it'll be helpful to get her thoughts on what her perceptions were in the beginning of our journey. So welcome.
You. I'm happy to be here. And just to be clear, it's old guy's loving wife.
Well, I think first of all, I appreciate you taking the time. I know you aren't big on being on camera and different things like that. It's taken a while to get to this point, but I wanted to maybe give a little history to the viewers so that they know where we're coming from the start. We tried to start investing back in 2007, and we didn't have any knowledge at that time. We just kept hearing people talk about having rentals and placing tenants and the tenants helping pay down the mortgage, and sounded like everything was working out really well for the people that we were listening to. And when we tried it without that knowledge, things kind of blew up really quickly. And we ended up losing those properties. We live in California. Tried to start investing in California a couple hours from where we live. We picked up a couple of properties, a single family and a duplex in Sacramento, California. And we got really bad loans on those properties at the time. They were doing stated income loans and ninja loans and things like that. They were adjustable rate mortgages. And once the interest rates reset after the first year, then the rent wasn't even covering the mortgage payment. We were able to hang on for about a year, but then we just couldn't do it any longer. We ended up going through bankruptcy in 2010, and it took a while for us to be able to try again, going into it with a lot more education. So I think one of the things that I think people might appreciate hearing is, I guess, why were you okay with trying to start investing in real estate a second time after the first time went so horribly wrong?
Well, I wasn't against it, but I wasn't for it. I didn't have the education. I know that you were 110% on board to do this, and this was something that you really believed in and you had been doing some work on. So I was going to stand with you again and go through this with you, but I was not invested in the whole process. I didn't want anything to do with it. I figured if I saw you stay invested and I saw that it was something that was doable for us, then I was willing to get on board. But I needed to know for sure that we weren't going to go through bankruptcy again, that we weren't possibly going to lose our home, and that we weren't going to go back into the situation we were before when we started the first time. So it was something that I had to sit back and look at. I encouraged you and I was with you all the way. I just personally wasn't invested.
Well, I also, you know, we talk a lot, not just about real estate, but we try to stay in touch that way throughout our daily life and what we're going through each day. But I heard you say one time that you felt like I was forcing real estate on you for a while because it was super important to me, mainly in the beginning because I think as a lot of our viewers know, maybe not all know that I'm a general contractor. I've been doing it for 35 years now, but I never really had set aside any money for retirement. And in the beginning, that was my why. And that's why I was pushing so hard to to make it work, I guess, because as you know, through the research that I was doing, at first I was looking at, retirement accounts and trying to fill those up some way quickly. But once I dove into that a little bit more, I realized that that wasn't going to work fast enough at the time.
Mhm.
The first time we tried, I was in my 40s. And the second time around, when we purchased our first property, I was 57. And I do realize that I was pushing really hard because of that. And I guess, assumed that it would be important to you and our son too, because at the time, I thought that he should know about this and what we were doing because eventually he would probably take over whatever portfolio we built. So, we
So you did push both of us, he and I, our son and I and myself at the beginning, and you were very, um, how should I say this? It was something that was very strong in your life at that point, and I understand, and we did understand why. I personally just, you know me, I dig my heels in when somebody tells me I have to do something, and pretty much that's what you were doing. And I was saying, okay, I will sit here and I will listen, but I don't understand. And the more I don't understand something, the more frustrated I get and the more I push back. And that's what happened. But even with that happening, I was still beside you and believing that if this is something that you wanted to do, I was going to support you. And I knew eventually I would get on board, but I still needed to see what it was all about. Because when you brought us into the whole loop, you had already been educated. You had already been doing the Bigger Pockets and all those podcasts. So you knew what it was all about. We're sitting there and they're throwing out all these words and all these terms and all this stuff that I had no clue about. So it was hard to get excited. It's hard to get excited about something you have no clue what it is. So upon the many times we sat and we listened and we listened, we started having questions. You started to back off a little bit because I believe you at least saw that we were somewhat interested. And then we were able to ask you questions and then you were clarifying things. So it brought it back full circle where it was really a family investment, not just a you investment. And I think that's pretty much where we are now. And that is how we got to where we are. And it's important that whoever's on this journey with whomever, that they realize that people come in at different levels and at different times, and that be something that people take into account. It's not just because it's a no today doesn't mean it's going to be a no tomorrow. And it depends on the person how you're going to approach them to get them involved. We talk about everything from real estate to work to just life. And so communication is very important. If you don't have that communication with your partner, then it doesn't matter whether it's real estate or XYZ, it doesn't matter. It's not going to work. So I think one of the big things that we have going for us is that we do communicate and we do listen, maybe not right away every time, but we do listen and we do come back for clarification and understanding. Agreed?
Yeah, definitely. I agree 100%. Um, I wonder when or was there a certain point where maybe it was like a turning point where you started to understand. I know like Zuber talks about all the time, doing the work. I think that was frustrating for you because you didn't really understand what doing the work meant. And I that only came about for you, I would say within the last year, and you started to understand what he meant by that. But was there something that happened that when it clicked for you that this might be something that could work, something that could help us in our retirement years or anything like that that you recall, or was it just a gradual, I guess, a gradual understanding of the whole process?
I think it was gradual for the most part because I teach and my job is not just 8 to 4. I didn't ever feel like I had enough time to dedicate to real estate. But the times that I could give to it and I was able to ask you questions and you were able to answer it, then that made things more understandable. um, as you kept keeping me involved in the properties that were coming up for sale and how it would happen, and respecting the idea that I do not want to have a balloon payment on any property we have, and understanding why that helped. But I think my other big turning point was when we were participating in Dion's class. And that really changed my mind on how things could go. I could understand more, but I had to learn from you first. So then whatever he was teaching made more sense. It was clearer than it was at the beginning.
Yeah, we all know we're talking about Dion Talk Financial Freedom, and so we've taken his course. Obviously, we've taken a few other courses. That's something that some of us and our friends have talked about before is mentorships and are they worth it? I've mentioned before that, we took Ashley Hamilton's course, and that was one of the first ones. I got a lot out of it. It helped us build credit, regular personal credit and business credit. We've taken the Brick by Brick Wealth course with Casey, and of course, we're in Zuber's, we're in Dion's. We took the
Lumberjack.
Lumberjacks course, yeah, the Lumberjacks course, and well, I know I've gotten a lot out of it, and I think as time went on and you were able to understand, like you said before, acronyms and terminology and things like that, that was all. And I've talked to other people recently that don't understand those still, but I think we're in a place now where we can help people understand those, understand what it takes when you're looking at a property, how to analyze a property, what you need to be ready to purchase your first property and things like that. And, I still consider us rookies, but now that we've been going through the process for the last 4 years, we have a lot we can share with people. I hear you talk to people, on the side, and you really do understand at least the process to this point. So sometimes it's not easy because a lot of people out there don't, I don't know, not like that they don't care about financial betterment, for lack of a better term, but it's just not something people think about every day until maybe it's too late. Um, and thinking about that, I think this conversation that we're having today, our story is probably going to be need to be several different videos because there's so much to talk about. And we're just touching on the surface of the beginning. So we've discussed kind of what you felt in the beginning, um, and transitioning into understanding a little bit better the process and understanding and hopefully appreciating where these properties that we've acquired so far are going to take us and how they're going to help us in the future. You know, you're thinking of retiring after one more year. You're going to do part-time teaching for one more year. And I think it'll be a nice test period for our properties because it's taken us a while to get them to the point where um, this year is actually going to be a stabilization year, something that I didn't understand in the beginning. You know, I was kind of in a rush to pick up as many doors as possible, as quickly as possible, because of where we are age-wise. You know, we're closer to retirement than a lot of people in the group, and we needed to get something rolling pretty quickly. It's not advisable, of course, as we know now, but what have you thought about the challenges that we faced with the properties? Because, you know, we've been through evictions, we've been through um, turnovers, we've been through a lot of repairs last year. We had to pay for a lot of stuff. How have you seen that, or what was that like in your eyes?
Well, you have a tendency to want to shelter me from a lot of things. So I would have to wait till Wednesday accountability meetings to hear some of the things that were happening. And I understand why you were trying to shelter me, but that's not good. You know, if you're in a partnership with someone, the other person needs to know as much as possible in case one, something happens, but two, to help carry that load. So as I was hearing things that were happening, it tended to make me more aware of what to look for the next property, not only property, but property management and location. And I think sometimes I could bring a different perspective than what you were looking at because you're so deep into all of it that sometimes looking at it from a different perspective allows you to see something that you've missed or something that we need to change or something else. So I think as we go forward, we need to continue open communication and we need to um, document better what we're doing, which, as we know, starting this year, next year, I will be working with you closer on documenting and taking care of the paperwork and all of that for the properties. And to be perfectly honest, I know what state are properties and even some of the what towns, but I don't know them as well as you do. And I want to get that under my belt so that I can be more help to you as we continue to stabilize and as we continue to pick up more properties. My thought is in the future, I don't want to stop investing. I don't want to stop buying. I would like to get to the point to where some of the monies that we have coming in are not what we're living off of, but monies that we could use to help others. I respect Lumberjack so much for changing that jail into housing and other things for the community. I think that's great. And those are the kinds, not to that scale, of course, but putting back into the community instead of taking out of the community, I think is important. And you know, my heart's in education and kids with special needs. So working around that or doing something else. So I don't ever see us not doing real estate for whatever reason. I think we will always continue. We might slow it down, but we'll always continue to be involved in some way.
I like that thought too, of being able to help people. Um, and there are a lot of different ways we could do that. what are your thoughts on the fact that we started investing out of state and we haven't seen any of our properties in person?
Um, well, back a while, your mom had invested in a property with you in Texas, and neither one of you had seen the property. And I thought you were both crazy because I thought, how do you even know there's a building there? And even if you ask the realtor to take a picture, how do you know it's really there? So when you approached me about um, investing out of state because our state is so expensive, it never occurred to me to say, no, how do we know the building's not there? So I don't know where my mindset changed or why it changed, but I know that our first property, which is the triplex, will always be my favorite and probably one that I will never want to let go of for a lot of different reasons. One, because it proved to both of us that we can do it. And two, because our property manager, I think, is top notch. And I know that if we ever have any questions about things that we could learn to find better property managers, that he'd be willing to help us with that. So as we pick up more people on our team along the way, whether they're out of state or not, I think that's the key. And I like investing out of state because it keeps you from driving back and forth the property to make sure it's okay. Because I can see you doing that, and that's not healthy for anyone.
Yeah, I think you're right on that point. I think it puts more pressure on you because,
Yes.
we've shared that in the meetings over the last weeks that if we did have a property right here in our own backyard that, you are constantly going to be checking on it, see, how many people are there, how many cars are parked there. Are they working on the cars on the property, which is not always a good thing, different things like that. So in that respect, I think we are better off out of state. And, you know, um,
It makes it harder because even though we see pictures and we have found some good people to work with, contractors and roofers and what have you, it's good, but they don't see things through our eyes, and what they think is okay, which we saw with the last property, we may not think it's okay. So I think our tightening up our criteria for property managers or for whoever's going to work on the houses is important. And I think that's something we can work on, some type of a checklist or something so that we know what we're looking for and constantly improving that, because we need to constantly be better, not stay stagnant, but just be better as times come and go.
yeah, those are all great points, I think. And now that we have gone through quite a bit with the properties that we have, and I think when in moving forward, we'll be able to make better decisions, like you said earlier, about um, maybe better neighborhoods, nicer looking properties to begin with. It is kind of hard sometimes to, even though we're getting what I would consider good photos and video of the property beforehand, like you mentioned, this last property, when you look really close up, for example, the interior paint was not as nice as we thought. So we ended up painting the place and that added some some money to basically the all-in cost for the property, which changes your cash on cash return and things like that. So
And I think us having gone through that, our next property will be more aware and will be more willing to ask for better pictures, and even a second opinion on what needs to be done and not just take it as, yes, this is good to move into.
yeah, well, I think we're lucky. Right now we have some really good property managers across the board. I think people know we're in a few different states, but that can change any time. We've had to fire a couple of property managers, and managing property managers is I think the biggest part of our job right now. But I think for now, we'll leave it there. And maybe in our next discussion, we can talk about some of the things we've gone through more in detail. You know, like we mentioned, the evictions. We're going through an eviction right now with the gun lady, so that's a story to be told. But again, I appreciate you taking the time to come on here with me and give people a different perspective, you know, from the way you look at it helps me understand that I need to, like you said, communicate better, keep you posted because things happen during the week. And then when we do our Wednesday call is is when I usually share it with the group to get their feedback and stuff. But I should be sharing it with you first because we're in this together. So um if you're okay with coming on again with me in the near future, we'll continue sharing the rest of our journey.
Absolutely. And I would like to remind everyone to press that like button and to subscribe if they haven't, so that we can keep making these, you can keep making the accountability meetings and bringing on special guests, because I think all the special guests have given good information and there's a little bit for everyone and everything.
Okay, great. Yeah, I hope they'll share it, like it, subscribe, and we'll look forward to our next meeting. Thanks again. We'll chat with you soon.